Quinnen Williams needs to have himself a monster 2022 season. Let's talk about why. Hey, what's going on? I'm Matt O'Leary back with another video, and today I'll be getting into, Quinnen Williams and why he needs to have a monster year in 2022. Before we get started, we just got to mention a couple of things. First, follow along with me on social media at Matt O'Leary NY. Make sure to subscribe to the Just Jets podcast, wherever it is that you get your podcast, new episodes every Monday. And then finally, the good news here. New episode of Exit 16 West over on Patreon. We talked with Jets Central. It was an awesome conversation. Please make sure to check it out. Okay, so in 2021, Quinnen Williams was okay. He took a little bit of a step back from 2020. I don't think anyone would say otherwise, like even the biggest Quinnen Williams fans. Again, was he bad? No. Was he as good as what he was in his sophomore year? Absolutely not. He was middle of the pack. He was okay. He was fine. He didn't look like a third overall pick. He didn't look like someone who is fighting for a mega contract either. So we're going to kind of get into the numbers and all kinds of stuff like that. So he had 6 sacks, 7 tackles for a loss, 12 quarterback hits, and 16 pressures, which was down from his 2020 season. The year prior, as a sophomore, he had 7 sacks, 20 pressures, and that was in 2 less games, which is another thing with him. He's got to stay healthy, man. Was it 13, and 15 games? We got to get him on the field for 17. Like I just said, still, his numbers are pretty solid, but it doesn't look like third overall pick. Best player in the draft class, dominant numbers that we were promised when he was picked third overall in 2019. Again, I still think he could be a very good player, and we're going to go through why. And the Jets obviously just gave him his 5th year option, so they don't necessarily have to worry about giving him a mega contract right now, which I think is more than okay, because in his 4th year, if he shows out and is the player that we all think he can be, then it's going to look a lot more deserving of getting that mega deal. And by the way, I want Quinnen Williams here. I don't want to trade Quinnen Williams because it gets to a point where you just got to start keeping some of your own guys. You can't continue to year over year just flip these guys for picks and futures. Like, eventually you got to keep your good players. And that's what Quinnen Williams is. He's a good player to a very good player, even at times. He hasn't really been an elite level player, at least consistently enough for me to warrant that kind of contract at this second. Again, we'll go through some of these guys here who, you could maybe say are comparable to contracts that he's going to be looking at, and they're not exactly on par with what his numbers are so far throughout his career. Like Vita Vea got 4 years, $71 million. That is $17.75 million per year. I think Quinnen would come in above that, by the way. I think a part of the reason why Vea got that deal is because it's in Florida, which obviously the state tax is going to play a factor there. We see that happen all the time. And it's on a really damn good football team too. Like, you're going to take a hometown discount if your team is a Super Bowl contender every single year. But like Leonard Williams got 3 years, $61 million, $21 million AAV. DeForest Buckner, 4 years, $84. That's a $21 million AAV. Chris Jones and the Chiefs, 4 years, $80 million, $20 million AAV. Like, these guys are getting $20+ million deals, and he's got to improve his game a little bit more to the point where you'd feel comfortable giving him that kind of money at that $20 million. Because that's on, if he's extending, it's probably going to be somewhere in that ballpark. Like, you could make the case like he's probably playing like a $15 million a year to $17 million a year player, right? Like, that's, I guess, probably fair value for what he is right now, but there is not a snowball's chance in hell that he is signing an extension for that money. If you are extending him, it's going to be in the $20 million a year range, obviously plus or minus a little bit here. But here's why I think he could take the next step this year and prove that he would be worth a contract extension of that caliber. Number one, an edge rush. Finally, in his 3 years so far in the league, they have not had a consistent edge rush. Last year was supposed to be the breakout where they were finally going to have that edge rush, and then Carl Lawson gets hurt and misses the entire year. That obviously didn't help. John Franklin Myers is another reason. Like, having him move back inside is going to be epic because the two of them in 2020, when they were rushing from the interior, were two of the better interior rushers in all of football. And getting those two guys back, hopefully getting Carl Lawson back into the level that he was before he came here and signed that contract, getting Jermaine Johnson in here, who, by the way, like, do I think Jermaine's going to be a stud right away and give you 8+ sacks or whatever? Probably not. That's a little bit lofty expectations, but he should be at minimum, like, solid starter from right away. And then eventually down the line, like, these edges and pass rushers usually tend to take a couple of years before they really hit their stride, unless, like, they're the Nick Bosas of the world, or you know, there's rare exceptions, but that's not what he is. He's going to come in and he's going to come in and be solid. I'm not saying he's bust or anything like that. I just think he's going to be okay for a year or two, and then eventually, you know, take that big step to where he's maybe pushing for double-digit sacks. But add that with Huff and Vinny Curry back and Michael Clemens and whoever else coming off the edge, and I think that's going to play a big factor. We talked about JFM moving back inside. And the better secondary is going to help out the Jets pass rush as well, because these quarterbacks aren't going to be able to get the ball out as quick with DJ Reed, who was phenomenal last year, and with obviously Sauce Gardner, who was a 4th overall pick for a reason. Like, that's going to significantly help the Jets pass rush as well. And the amount that they're going to be able to rotate guys to and keep these guys fresh, I think will impact them in a positive way. Yeah, maybe they're not going to get the snaps that they might on another team who doesn't rotate as much, but they're going to be fresh for a lot longer, and probably as a result, I would think that would yield better pass rushing numbers. So that kind of goes into my next conversation here to close out, is what numbers would you like to see from him in order for you to feel comfortable about him getting that big time contract? Number one is, can we get to 17 games played? A full year. That would be phenomenal to see a full 17-game season of Quinnen Williams without getting banged up. Check. That would be great. I would like 8+ sacks. Now, a lot of people are saying double digits, and like, yeah, yes, I would love to see that too. But I'm even setting the floor or the bar a little bit lower than that. Give me 8. Give me 8 or more. That'd feel pretty good. Give me somewhere around 30 pressures. That's kind of where DeForest Buckner's been at the last few years. And to me, like, I feel like that's the benchmark that you want to get to. Obviously, Aaron Donald is the best interior guy in the league, but that's just an absolutely unreasonable goal for him to hit. If he could get to DeForest Buckner level, where DeForest Buckner's an all-pro, and like Quinnen Williams hasn't been to that point yet. He's flashed that, but he's got to do it more consistently. And the last thing was less prolonged stretches of going ghost is what I'm calling it, because there's games where he looks downright dominant. Like the game against Tennessee was epic. He was phenomenal. That was one of his better games throughout his entire Jets career so far. But then there was a stretch at the end of the year. He went 4 straight games without a sack to close things out. Like, we got to keep those numbers up. And I know sometimes the sack numbers could be a little bit overrated, but I mean, your leader in sacks can't be 6 this year. It just can't. So I hope Quinnen Williams takes that step. I think he does, and that's why. I went through and listed out. We went through what potential contract extensions could look like, and I gave you my numbers, what I think he should look to hit this year in order to get one of those big time contracts. You let me know in the comments below, what kind of numbers do you want to see from him this upcoming year, and get after me on social media. Subscribe if you're new. I'll talk to you next time.